walking down the so-called highway. It's a bit more of an overgrown ATV trail, but it's clear, it's straight, and it's followable.
It's impossible to know what's going to happen on a canoe trip. You never know what's going to be around the next corner. It'll show you your highs and it'll show you your lows, and it'll test limits you didn't even know you had. But the important thing isn't how many kilometers you can do in a day, or how much weight you can carry at a time. It's those 6 brothers sitting right next to you that are there with you every step of the way.
Will just got here. We're gonna get him in the call and we'll get it going.
Yeah, sorry for the hold up.
It seems like you guys are very disorganized. Like Jacob's been here for a half hour.
Oh no.
Good, how are you?
Lily D.
Here they are. Here they are. Canoe4Covid gang. It is a gang. So we got you 4. You're in Toronto and you're in your bubble, and then we got Jacob. You're in Halifax, and you're not coming back to Ontario because you're afraid of it. and we have one other member, I think, in Kingston, but he's in cahoots, or not in cahoots. What's it called? We don't know where he is.
It might be a little bit late. He might be joining us later, but we'll have to see.
Yeah.
Kids these days.
Busy guy.
So desensitized. All right. So this is a Whisky Fireside Chat. I think we got Jacob. You're underage, so you're going to have to drink tea. Cheers to you. And you guys, cheers to you. Now, I didn't know what to bring because I'm not sure how sophisticated you are. So what should I have?
Definitely the fireball.
Cheers, everybody.
Cheers. Yeah.
We got to get into this interview. First of all, tell everybody who you are and why am I interviewing you?
So we're Canoe4Covid, and last summer, in the summer of 2020, we did a 60-day canoe trip across Ontario to raise some money for COVID-19, and now we are in the process of making and releasing a documentary about our adventure across Ontario. This trip took us months to plan. 60 days in the wilderness was going to be no small feat. For weeks, we'd spend hours a day packing and preparing. All of our friends and family were super supportive, and they'd help us pack for hours on end. A few days before the trip, we picked up our boats from Novacraft and were ready to set sail. All that was left to do was our news interviews, and then off we went.
Now we're already past 50% of our goal, which is $60,000. We're also very excited to announce that 50% of the money we raise will be donated to Indigenous communities that have been affected by COVID-19. Some communities that we've passed through on our previous canoe trips.
So we've just finished the interview with CBC.
Yes, we did.
And now we're on the way to Bolton to pick up our RV.
We're running off of like 4 hours of sleep.
We're so
and we had to
tired.
talk and be on TV. That's gonna be embarrassing.
And that's fantastic because I know about you guys. I actually knew what you were doing. I heard about it during the first lockdown. Got excited. I thought, hey, a whole bunch of youth are going across and doing an amazing trip, a 60-day trip, and it wasn't just across Ontario. There were some routes that were not very easy. I tell you that.
Shortly after our morning run in the rapids, we encountered some seriously challenging bushwhacks. We sent Kalen ahead to scout, but what he found did not look promising. Our path was covered in every kind of obstacle you can imagine. It was no doubt that navigating with two 17-foot canoes would be a massive challenge.
Yo, which way was the path?
To make matters even worse, a lack of communication meant that half of the group went ahead to search for the end of the portage, while the boats got stuck in the dense trees of the forest.
Yo, boy! They can't hear us.
And I did hear a rumor though that everybody pulled their weight except Jacob.
I wonder who told you that. I don't agree with that one. I don't know.
They said that you didn't even paddle one stroke the entire time.
Yeah, I'm sure Kalen said that.
No, when I was watching the video, I was thinking, no, I think Jacob was doing more than everybody else, actually.
None of us had ever encountered an obstacle like this before, and it took some serious creative thinking to figure out a way around it.
Take a trip with me. Down there. Oh boy.
In my 157 days of canoe tripping, never have I seen something so terrifying.
You want to go on the front or should I?
I'll go in the back.
Who did the editing of the film? It's amazing. There's only the first episode out now. There's going to be 5 more, I think. So who actually edited that piece together?
Yeah, so that editing was just done by me, just here at home, and yeah, just just took a long time. I probably put like I'd say definitely over 300 hours in the first episode alone, and it was very tedious. It's a tedious job to go through and organize and edit everything.
And we had hours and hours of footage. And terabyte total.
Yeah, there's about a terabyte of footage total from all 60 days.
And a lot of that is just Jacob filming the floor. So.
Oh my Lord, they're taking the piss out of you, man. So the one thing I really liked about the first episode in the very beginning was you all had jobs given to you for the journey.
My name's Tim, and I was one of the 2 primary boat carriers on Canoe4Covid.
My name's Kalen, and I carried the barrel, as well as working on filming and our media promotion.
My name's Will Vise. I was the trip navigator and double pack carrier.
Hi, I'm Jacob, and I was the pack carrier and fisherman on the trip.
My name's George, and I was the trip chef, and I also carried the Wanigan.
My name is Nolan Azes, and I was one of the boat carriers and also the fire maker.
Is that a camp thing? Because I have a feeling you went to camp. Am I right? You all went to a camp?
That would be correct, yeah.
Yeah, so that we all went to Camp Amic for boys. We were counselors in training. That's actually how we all met. And that's a big thing we do at camp. Everyone has a job and everyone does it well to increase efficiency on the trip.
So what were your jobs? We'll start off with Jacob in Halifax. What was your specific job on the trip?
So I was the pack carrier. So I had to carry one of the packs that had like our personal belongings and all of our food for the trip. And I had that and paddles and life jackets. And then that's what I would do on portages. And then when we got to the campsite, my main job was the fisherman. So I would be fishing at the campsites, trying to catch us dinner.
Yeah, so Jacob just caught the biggest fish I've ever seen, like in my entire life alive. Yo, what?
You beat it with a rock to kill it. All right, I didn't have my fillet knife on me, so it got on my line, snapped my line, shallow water, I grabbed the biggest rock I could find, jumped in the water and just smashed it on its head. Pretty respectful death, I would say so myself.
Yeah, pretty ridiculous story, but pretty gritty out in the woods. But it was like I don't know, I'd say a 12-pound pike. Definitely highlight catch of the trip.
That's fantastic. And who was the route planner? Who actually designed where you went?
That was me.
You got to give some detail on this. Like, what were you on, man, when you designed that route?
I originally came up with a route plan at the end of last summer for a 50-day canoe trip. Once Kalen and Nolan and Georges told me about this 60-day canoe trip, I thought it was a perfect opportunity to utilize this route.
Our route starts 250 kilometers north of Thunder Bay in Wabakimi Provincial Park.
We will spend a few days in Wabakimi enjoying the park. From there, we will go down to Nipigon Lake,
where we will paddle 100 kilometers across Nipigon,
down the Nipigon River into Lake Superior.
And then we'll cross part of Lake Superior along the northern shore to the Michipicoten River in the Missinaibi area.
The Michipicoten River is a 40-kilometer river which we'll drag up and get to Lake Missinaibi.
From there, we'll make our way towards Biscoe Tasting,
the Spanish River.
We will spend 3 nights in
Killarney Provincial Park,
after which we will travel along the Georgian Bay to the French River. We will travel up the French River to Lake Nipissing
and paddle Lake Nipissing into North Bay. Then from North Bay, we'll make our way down the Mattawa, where we'll portage 25 kilometers
to Algonquin Park. We'll be heading east through Algonquin Park, going through the Barron Canyon and exiting at the military town of Petawawa. After Petawawa, we're gonna head down the Ottawa River.
On day 60, we'll finish our trip
in downtown Ottawa.
Yeah, that was an interesting few experiments occurred there. You know, some people might call it insanity. I call it innovation. Yeah, we try to do a few new things, like connect areas that we tripped in before, but we'd never gone between. So some crazy stuff with that. We were originally going to actually, when I initially planned the route, it was supposed to end in Algonquin Park at Canoe Lake, because that's where our camp is located. So, you know, it's not quite as far as Ottawa, so we would have had like an extra week for Lake Superior. So it's a little more reasonable. But yeah, so but you know, the trip isn't just about us. It's also about, like, you know, the charity and raising money and whatnot. And we decided that having the end be in Ottawa Parliament would be much better for fundraising purposes.
Yeah, so we'll get to the whole COVID thing and you raising money for this. But basically, you started in Wabakimi, and it seemed like you really love Wabakimi. And then you went down the Kapka River, which, like, wow, like waterfall after waterfall after waterfall. And then you went across Lake Nipigon. All right?
Yeah.
And then you went down the Nipigon River, and then you went to Lake Superior. Now, I've only seen the first episode, so I kind of looked at the map you did, but you did go along the North Shore of Lake Superior, and then you went inland. Did you go down the Missinaibi?
So we went up the Michipicoten first. We got to Lake Missinaibi, but we didn't go in the Missinaibi River. We went up the Little Missinaibi River, which goes south instead. We, you know, weaved our way over to the, you know, like Lake Windermere and whatnot, and the lakes in that area until we got to Chapleau, and then from there we pretty much beelined east to the Spanish River, and then.
Sorry, question. How the heck did you go from Chapleau to the Spanish River? Like,
how do we do that?
We'll break it down.
I spent a lot of time reading up on that, and I haven't found anyone who's canoe tripped from Chapleau to the Spanish River. Everyone, you know, if other people were to do this type of route, they'd all just stick on Lake Superior and go down to St. Mary's River or something, or they'd go much farther south and go, like, you know, through the Cow River or something like that. Yeah, so getting from Chapleau to the Spanish River is a bit of an experiment. It's a bit of science going on there. Yeah, that area, there's this gap sort of between the two watersheds, because Chapleau is all in the Arctic watershed, and then you need to get over onto the Great Lakes watershed briefly and then switch back again. But yeah, there's this one gap. We called it the Great Dry. It's pretty much an area where there aren't any lakes. There's like little creeks and swamps. And pretty much, like, you draw a line from Chapleau, and which way you go if you're trying to get southeast, you have to go through the Great Dry. So, like, you know, you just have to pick your poison. We decided to do this one route that had a little lake halfway in between. One lake in 3 days. Good time.
I think there's a reason no one ever trips through there, is because it's not fun.
Yeah, no, it's not fun, but it's good for the bones, good for the soul. Healthy bit of pain, never hurt anyone.
And then when you went from the Spanish, you went along the North Shore of Lake Huron, I guess, and then did you go up the French and down the Mattawa, or no? You went across Algonquin, didn't you?
Yeah, so you see, like, we could have just gone straight over to the town of Mattawa, like all the way down the river, then all the way down Ottawa River. But you see, I absolutely hate the Ottawa River with a vengeance. I find it so boring. So I thought, you know, why don't we cut through Algonquin Park? It's harder, but it's a lot more interesting. It's a lot prettier. The water's better, and it's not boring, you know. So I thought, yeah, let's go through the park. Let's do an unnecessary 26-kilometer portage. So it was 28 kilometers. Right? So
after remeasurement, it was 28.
Yeah, Highway 631, I believe it is, near North Bay. Search that up. We portaged the entire length of that highway from start to finish. In a single day.
So when you think about it in the sense, it's like, it was more like we did 5K or 6K into a spot where we stayed by where the Mount de Fond crossed the river. And then we went across the highway, and then we went down 28K the next day.
Yeah.
So if you connect those 2 days, I think
it's like 30 something kilometers.
Yeah. Brutal.
Was there a time on the trip where you blamed the route planner?
No, we never blamed the route planner. We all had like months before the trip where we were, you know, planning this and organizing it, and you know, we all knew the route and we all knew the areas, and we could, you know, each of us had the able opportunity to go on Google Maps, satellite view, you know, like look at the route, see what we were getting ourselves into. Maybe we didn't know the full extent of it, but I don't think any of us at any point blamed the route maker. I think it was just sort of an opportunity. Each challenge that we faced, like I sort of viewed it just as an opportunity for us to like grow and adapt and you know, work more efficiently, work better together as a group, and really just, you know, work together to get over those obstacles.
Right. And I think the idea of doing 60 days across Ontario in itself is a crazy idea. And then to do what we did by going inland, away from Superior and away from the Great Lakes, and actually going through some rugged, trippy terrain, what it really did is it caught attention of a lot of people in the canoeing industry and the canoeing community for, you know, how innovative of a route it was. And I think we all praise Will for somehow connecting like these insane places, and to say we've been through all these places on one trip is crazy. And I don't think, you know, it was difficult. There's times where it was like, how is this even a canoe trip if we've just been portaging for 4 days straight and we haven't paddled? 3 days. And but in the end of the day, it was still the best route planning possible. And yeah.
It was interesting too when you guys were organizing the trip, and you guys a lot of media hype. You run a lot of Toronto shows, radio shows, and morning shows about it.
Right now, a group of 6 friends are on a 60-day, 2,000-kilometer canoe trip through Ontario. The goal, to raise $60,000 for COVID-19 relief efforts. Today marks day 27, and Kaylin Robinson joins us from Chapleau, Ontario. Kaylin, great to talk to you this morning. How did you and your friends come up with this idea?
I did get some people saying, "Who are these guys? You know them?" I went, "No." One of you guys had communicated with me and told me about the trip, but I didn't know who you were, and they were saying, "Well, you know, they're pretty young as well." We're all young at one point. You were 17, 18, 19, like mixed, right? And so, but then I found out that you had gone to camp, a good solid camp, and I thought, you know, they'll be fine. They'll be fine, because you guys have to have done some solid trips before this trip, right?
Yeah, we all have a pretty good amount of trip experience coming into it. Nolan had 2 22-day trips he'd done. Will and I and Tim had done 50-day trips, done a 50-day trip before, and Jacob had done a 36-day, and Kaylin had done a 5-day.
So yeah, I was like, I had the least amount of experience coming into the trip, and you know, I also started canoe tripping at like the latest age between all the guys, but I knew I had a passion for it from the first canoe trip I went on with George. And 60 days just sounded amazing no matter what. And but cumulatively together, I mean, like I don't think I would have done it if I didn't have like the boys with the amount of experience they did going into it, right?
That's incredible. So George, what was your job during the trip?
Fritter night.
My job, so during the day, I carried the Wanigan. So yeah, it was like the leather tongue strap, carried that wooden torture device on my back and my neck for the entire summer. And at night and at all breaks, I'd be the chef. So I was making breakfast, lunch, and dinner for the boys and serving it up nice.
So what do you think of the Wanigan? Because when I guided in Temagami, we carried Wanigans, and if I see one, I actually want to vomit.
Say the first 10 days of it, you like can't really move your neck properly and you feel like you're gonna die. But then eventually your neck gets really strong and it gets pretty easy. I remember one day that Jacob and I were doing a train track portage and I decided to switch off. He'd take the Wanigan and I'd take the pack. And I always just kind of assumed, since the Wanigan was a bit lighter than the packs, that I had it easy. Jacob's sitting there carrying for the first 10 meters and he's like, oh, this is really easy. And about, I think maybe 10, 20 minutes later, Jacob,
yeah, way later.
You're an absolute creature for that. Like, I don't know how you do that.
Brutal.
But I love it. I think it's fun.
Brutal.
I think that's a great example of like why we do assign why we did have assigned, things with our trip and why we each had our own jobs, right? Is because, eventually you get so good at what you're doing, the efficiency just cranks out and
Master in your own field.
You grow that neck strength.
It's also like some people just prefer like things that like the Wanigan, like George just prefers the Wanigan. Like some of us have been doing it for a long time. Like Tim on his camper trips was just like always the boat carrier. And so, like I think as Kaylin said, like you do one thing for like a number of years and then it's just like your thing, like you just do it and it's just your thing, how to do it so well you couldn't do anything else,
Yeah, I think I have now a total of 102 days carrying a Wanigan, so pretty good.
Man, that's can you explain to some people out there, if they've never gone to camp, why you travel 3 per canoe? So a lot of people don't get that, but
Try not to miss me in the middle, Tim.
yes, let's go. See you guys in 60.
See you in Ottawa, boys. Love you, buddy.
Oh, that's for efficiency. You can't, with the amount of gear we have for the length of our segments, it would be extraordinarily difficult and probably not possible to do portages in a single go if we had only 2 people per canoe. So by having 3 people per boat, it minimizes the number of boats that need to be carried. And because of that, we can do all of our portages in a single run, which increases the speed a lot. Like, I can't imagine how long it would take to do like an 18-kilometer portage on some obscure overgrown logging road twice. Like, it's kind of ridiculous. We do everything in one go, and that's why we need 3 in a boat.
But also increased efficiency on water as well.
Yeah, it's faster too.
And were there the only injury I saw so far, because I've only watched the first episode, there was an eye injury. Were there any other injuries on the trip?
George right now is calling Rob from Paddlefoot just because earlier today we were doing a bushwhack. I think it was our first bushwhack, and Will just kind of fell, and then a stick kind of got in his eye and kind of hurt him.
Yo,
Will, you want to
print thing?
show them your eye?
Yeah, sure.
Initially, we weren't too worried about Will's injury. However, as the day wore on and Will's pain only became worse, we grew increasingly concerned. Wow, yeah, myself and Jacob probably have the 2 worst other injuries. Mine was the only one that required a hospital visit, but Jacob's was the first. I'll let Jacob talk about his, now I can talk about mine.
Yeah, mine wasn't too serious. I'm sure in the clip I'll be freaking out a lot, but it was more just I thought I was going to get evac'd off the trip, and I was really bummed out about it at the time. But I think we were on a bushwhack in Missinaibi, I believe, and we had the machetes out. We were cutting trees down to make sure the canoes could fit through, and I don't really remember it that well, but somehow the machete bounced back off the tree and hit me in the leg. And it was in like the middle of the woods, like middle of like nowhere, like not nowhere, but middle of the woods, middle of a bushwhack. And I just remember being like really freaked out, but all the boys were there helping me out. And honestly, without the boys there, if it was a different group of guys, I don't know if I could have like stayed as calm as I did. But I remember, I think it was Nolan and Tim, they bandaged me up nice. And then we just kept doing the portage.
What did you guys have for bailout? Did you have like a spot device or InReach or whatever, a sat phone or?
Yeah, we had spot trackers that we used, and we also had a sat phone. It's great to have like that combination of both in case something does go wrong. I think the only time we used our sat phone seriously was twice. Once for Will's injury with his eye, and then once for Nolan's injury. But it was great to have, for sure.
And you said you went to the hospital for.
Yeah, so that was we were in Killarney, and pretty much we were like going up this creek, coming in from Georgian Bay back into the park, and it was just this creek with a lot of like very short portages. So we were kind of like trying to do it. We were rushing a lot and kind of just trying to get the stuff out of the boats, 100-meter portage back into the boats, paddle 200 meters, repeat. You know, like. So it was very like rushed, and we were trying to get it quickly. And there was one part of this one portage right near the end that was like very slippery, and I slipped on a root and I dropped the boat like on my arm, and my arm kind of got pinched between like the boat and this root. And yeah, so it just started swelling up, and like there's a lot of photos. I think that's episode 5, I'm gonna say. Yeah, it's episode 4 or 5.
I think it's the end of 4. I think 4 ends with that.
Could be, yeah. And anyway, so yeah, like my arm swells up a lot, and pretty much like we called for an evac like immediately. And luckily we had one of our sponsors, Ted from Killarney Outfitters, was right there. So the boys were able to stay there overnight while I went with Will into Sudbury to the emergency room to get my arm checked out. But like honestly, yeah, like it was really incredible, especially by that point in the trip, like just how efficiently we were able to like, you know, like rectify the mistake, and like sort of like everyone just stayed calm, and just like it was just perfect execution, you know. It was just like right, like every step of the way was just so clean and like well executed. And we got back, and we actually made it to our intended campsite, I believe, that day.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. Now, were there people before you went, whether they're friends, family, parents, whatever, concerned and thought that you were crazy and sort of didn't want you to go, or were they sort of like full support?
My parents, for example, were like so against it at first. They thought, oh, like there's no way we're letting you go on a canoe trip with 5 other guys, and we only know like 2 of them for 60 days. And they were like so against it maybe for the first 2 days. And then I sort of just started talking to them, showing them the route, introduced them to like a lot of the guys on the trip, and like they got to know my parents got to know them. And then once my parents realized it was like, oh, this is actually going to happen, this is a valid summer plan, and it's like an amazing summer plan, they sort of just hopped on board. And then I can't speak for the other parents, but my parents for the first couple of days weren't really all for it. But once I really explained to them and showed them that it was going to be something serious, they just hopped right on board.
Yeah.
Same for most of it.
Yeah, I remember talking to my dad about it the night me and George thought of the idea. I called him and let him know. I was like, hey, I'm going to do this 60-day canoe trip this summer. And he was like laughing at me. And he was like, yeah, okay, right. Well, you know, still trying to figure something else, you know, have a backup plan. But we dedicated so much time into it that I think every single one of our parents noticed that and recognized, you know, how much effort we were putting in. Honestly, I feel like for a lot of our parents, it was a big moment of kind of like the first time their kids had turned to adults, letting them go out, and we went out into the wilderness, and you know, not having that assurance, but
didn't come back for 60 days.
Yeah, big coming of age moment. And I know my
best grad trip ever.
Definitely big mixed feelings, I think, for all the parents. I mean, like on one hand, it's like such an incredible opportunity. Like who wouldn't want their kid to be able to experience that? But at the same time, like it's got to be kind of a leap of faith, just trusting your kid enough to like send them out into the bush for 60 days, you know, like 2 months, a lot of time, you know, so.
So this is our site for tonight. We found such a sweet site right at the end of Nipigon.
All that times 3 today. To the horizon times 3.
Nice site. Check this out in the back though, right here. In here is gonna be our site, dude. Unload the packs, unload everything in there. I'll help you self-load.
That's amazing. Like, so you raise money for COVID and for a food drive, right?
Yeah. For Food Banks Canada. So we raised started raising money, and we thought like the best thing we could do was to raise money for the food banks, and Food Banks Canada is great, charity. So we chose Food Banks Canada because raising money for food banks is always an issue that'll be important. And we were back at this time not knowing what the situation of COVID could entail. We didn't know if by the time we left out on this trip, if COVID would have been done with or not. So we always knew that, depending on what the situation would be, there would always be people who were impacted economically by it. And there's always a need for food banks. And that need was more urgent because of COVID.
Was there a time on the trip or any trip that you've been on where that whole memory wanted you to spend more time wilderness tripping than ever before?
I'd say for me, that moment was probably when I was about, how old was 2015. So I was 13 years old, and I was on day 21 of a 22-day trip. And I think it was probably my 4th or 5th summer at camp. And every single summer I went, I loved camp, but I hated canoe trip. I just despised it, but all my friends liked it, so I pretended I liked it for summers and summers and summers, and I signed up for all the long trips. And I get to the end of that trip, my counselor turns to me and he's like, "Hey, so you think you could do this for 50 days?" And I'm like, "You know what? I could. I really could." That was amazing. And it just clicked right there. And ever since then, it's no looking back.
I guess I was 9, and we were doing this like 2.1 kilometer portage or something, and like it was brutal. Like that was like hell for me as a 9-year-old. And like 9-year-olds are idiots, right? So like I packed this like metal pot in this bag, like not in the water, but in like a backpack and bag, and it was this like pot just grinding into my back for like I don't know, like half an hour or something. Like it took me half an hour to walk 2 kilometers, but yeah, the feeling when I took that bag off, like when I dropped that pack at the end of doing that portage without taking a break, I was so proud of myself. I was like, that was awesome. Time to do a 50-day trip. Yeah, that was really the moment. I think it was on the last day of my first canoe trip ever. It was a little 3-day in Algonquin Park. Yeah, it was at the Yankee, that portage.
Yeah, for me it was pretty similar. Like definitely like a similar thing to Will's. Is like not necessarily those moments of like, wow, like this is so incredible. Like yeah, I had a lot of those too, sort of like growing up canoe tripping, but I'd say the biggest moments for me were like those moments where it's not necessarily like so great and it's kind of like sucks in the moment, but then you look back on it and it's like such a great memory. Like for me, like that memory is like when I did one of my 2 22-day trips up on the Kissaugamy River. There was one day we had like really brutal weather. It was just like raining. It was probably like maybe like 10 degrees tops. Like it was a cold day, and there was a harsh north wind coming in. So we had to we couldn't make it to our site because my face and all my other cabin mates, like our faces were turning blue, lips were turning blue, like couldn't grip the paddle because our hands were so cold. Like it was like almost turned into a pretty severe situation, but I don't know. And we had to set up our tent, and we had 2 tents for I think 8 campers or 9 campers. And we only had time to set up 1 tent. And so we had 9 campers in this 1 tent on this bushcraft campsite. And it was kind of half set up on top of this bush. And yeah, it was just my foot was in a puddle, and it was just one of those awful cold trip nights. But and at the time it sucked. But looking back on it, I was man, I made it through that. And that same feeling, just such an incredible feeling of personal accomplishment. And you're just man, I want more of that. You're just hooked,
That's fantastic. So because I have the cheap version of Zoom, we're running out of time. So I got 2 really important questions for you. But just to sum up though, you have the first episode up on YouTube, and it's on Canoe4Covid on a YouTube channel. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff on your channel too, of how you got ready, the media you did. That's really good stuff. But yeah, everybody's got to watch the first episode, especially going across the big lake, Lake Nipigon. Holy chuffing. But then you've got another one coming out at the end of April, and then you've got 4 more after that. So I think the great plan is basically you guys got to come back after you've got the whole entire season out, and then we'll look at what happened at the end.
Right on.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
The last question that's probably the most important question of the entire night is that, George, you're going to get a haircut soon or what?
Absolutely not. I was actually just talking to my mom about that earlier today, and I think it's been about 14 months since my last haircut. I don't plan on a new one.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. And
Cheers to that. Thanks to that.
Oh, never go.
Kevin, I'm upset you didn't comment on my flow, but we'll forget about it.
Oh yeah. Okay. And Jake, I think you're safer in Halifax right now. To be quite honest, I think you should just stay there for a while.
Oh yeah, I'll stay sane up here.
Thanks a lot, guys. It was an amazing trip. 60 days across Ontario. You did it for charity, and you had an incredible time and good group dynamics, and nobody died. So cheers.
Yeah. Hey.
Cheers to that.
Thank you so much for having us on the show.
Oh, here comes the fireball. Cheers.
That's disgusting. You know, this stuff only tastes good when you're on a canoe trip.
Right.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah.
Kevin.
Cheers, Kevin.
Cheers.
Thanks for having us on.